Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. One of the intriguing races coming up in this primary is Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Seeking, I can't even count how many terms, but he dates back, obviously, first took office in the early 90s, 1992, and assumed office in 1993. It's a primary that, frankly, has not gotten a lot of attention, but Joe Arpaio's probably strongest challenger is our guest this week on Newsmaker Sunday, Dan Sabin, former police chief of Buckeye, 05 to 08, and three-time candidate for sheriff of Maricopa County. Thanks for being here.
No, thanks, John. I appreciate you having me on your show.
You've had trouble getting press on this race, haven't you? And why is that?
Well, quite frankly, we have. I think there's a challenge with the media because, he provides them a lot of fodder. And if you show us interest or do interviews with us, then that takes away from that and you're going to get challenges. Has always been the case.
Well, just this week I've invited Sheriff Joe Arpaio to come on the program, and I think he's kicking it around, and we'll see if he comes on. But you are challenging Joe Arpaio. Why?
It's not a personal thing for me. He's done a lot of good stuff, but professionally I can speak out against the way he manages this organization and its limited resources, because I've been fortunate enough and successful at this highest level in law enforcement here in the Valley. So I'm challenging him because we need to get this. We just need to stop everything and get it back in balance and let this organization become fiscally sound and be professional and move forward with the intentions of what this organization is meant to do.
Let's tick it off here. Is it the lawsuits that now I think are totaling almost $200 million that he's cost the county in lawsuits?
It's quite frightening. It's completely fiscally irresponsible.
How about just the use of resources and how he's doing the job?
Well, and that's the thing, is what you have is constitutionally the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. So that comes with a huge responsibility. That comes with a huge responsibility of connecting with all the local law enforcement, with the community leaders, and having a strategic law enforcement plan across this county. What you have is a sheriff that tends to be a lone wolf and do his own thing with the resources that he has, and leaves these cities to work on their own. I was fortunate enough to be the president of the Police Chiefs Association in the West Valley and the state organization, and Joe Arpaio's never been to a police chiefs meeting.
Why is that?
Don't have a clue. You'd have to ask him that, but it's one of the things that you realize when you're in this business, and you can look at what's going on, and that's why this campaign for me is comparing and contrasting.
You want to rebuild that department, and you say your experience in Buckeye suits you well to do that.
Yes, I was given a very professional challenge when I took over the city of Buckeye as their police chief in 2005. I was recruited from Mesa PD when I retired to go there for that reason, to bring that organization up to police standards, because it was lacking behind.
It was corrupt when you got there. Was that too strong a word?
No, there was corruption. We did do several criminal investigations, and in fact indicted a couple of police officers, yeah.
You ran into, I want to get this out there because I think it's interesting. You ran into Joe Arpaio at a kind of pseudo debate, but he will not debate you?
Correct, he won't debate, and that's unfortunate because this image that's been built of him being this toughest sheriff, well, if you're that tough, why would you be reluctant to sit on the stage and answer the tough questions? And it's frustrating, I'll be honest with you, because the beef I have with him is organizationally and professionally, it's not personal. But I ran into him at an event a couple weeks ago, and we crossed paths, and he always has something to say, and he asked me if I was getting ready to go be mean to him or talk,
blast him
on the radio. And, I stopped and I looked him right in the eye and I said, in fact, I put my arm on his shoulder. I said, no, Joe, I don't have anything against you personally. In fact, my wife and I, we pray for Ava every day in her health issues.
Joe Arpaio's wife has been ill.
Yes, she's been very ill. Mm-hmm. I said, that's way bigger than this stuff. I said, professionally, I totally disagree with the way you run this organization, and that's what I'm gonna go say on the radio.
What did he say?
He didn't know what to say, and then he just said, really? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I'm a Christian. Our family's very strong faith, and that's way more important than this stuff. So it's not personal. I just told him right to eye to eye. It's not personal for me.
You ran against Arpaio in 2004. He
Yes.
actually opened a criminal investigation against you that I'm not even going to get into.
Thank
I don't
you.
think it's
I appreciate that. Yes, he
worth
did.
the time. It was a 30-year-old allegation. You lost that election.
Correct.
And you sued for defamation.
Yes, I did.
You felt your reputation had been, you've been slandered.
Hugely. I was a child victim. and he exploited it into a criminal allegation against me, and I was a victim.
You didn't recover in that case. You did not recover damages in that.
No, there was a judicial ruling in the evidentiary part of the hearing that caused it to go.
This is really, I would say it's a nonpartisan position, Sheriff, right? But you've run as a Republican, you're a lifelong Republican, then you ran as a Democrat, when, in 08?
Yes, that's correct.
You ran as a Democrat in 08, you're running as a Republican now.
Correct.
If anybody is caught up on party affiliation, how would you explain Republican, Democrat, Republican?
Well, mine's a unique story. In the 2004 race, like you said, he opened a criminal investigation against me when I was a candidate against him. Well, obviously leaked it to the press. The results were, obviously, we lost. I mean, you can't win a campaign when there's a criminal allegation over your head. So after the election, no problem. I understand it's a blood sport. I didn't know it was going to be to that level, that's for sure. I went to the state party officials in the Republican Party. I went to the county party officials in the Republican Party. I went to the legislative Republican legislators and said, look, we need to get together and pass legislation that doesn't allow a candidate to investigate another candidate and make allegations. If there's a challenge, absolutely. A neutral entity like the county attorney general's office, absolutely. I'm all about
But
that.
to have your opponent open an
Well,
investigation.
exactly.
you thought was
It's
out of bounds.
unethical.
Right.
And they basically looked at me and said, we're not going to touch that because he won and we're not going to piss him off. I said, all right. So in 2008, when I ran, I looked at his record, and he was a lifelong Democrat and ran as a Republican to become the sheriff. So tactically, that's a decision because the job is apolitical. The partisan politics of this job are on the front end and on the back end.
Where has he failed, in your view?
Well, again, it's not in a disrespectful way, but he doesn't stand for any of the Republican values. He violates the Constitution. He violates the rule of law. He's violated his oath of office. He's fiscally irresponsible. In my 32-year law enforcement career, I've done none of those. I've never lost a lawsuit. I've never violated an oath of office, and certainly never violated the rule of law or violated American citizens' liberties. So it's about making people understand and dismantling this myth that what you're getting is not what's real.
How do you feel about the racial profiling lawsuit?
Well, ironically, when that bill was being written, I was the president of the West Valley Chiefs. I went to the legislature and testified to Russell Pierce, at the time was the senator, Jim Warren, the Speaker of the House, and I said, this is a great tool for us to use, but we have to be careful that we don't misuse this tool and have to be.
You're talking about swearing in deputies
Yes,
as ICE.
Well, that was
de facto.
287G,
Right.
which actually was a program I suggested in 2004 when Joe Arpaio wouldn't touch immigrations and said very many times in interviews, it's not that big a deal. And in fact, he arrested that returning military veteran from
That is exactly right.
and he held the immigrants at bay within our county.
That's right.
And he charged them with ag assault. And the law enforcement said, are you kidding? This guy's a hero. He's trying to protect our county.
No, as I remember, and I can't remember what organization it was, honored Joe Arpaio for his outreach into the Hispanic community early on in his career.
Yes, and he openly said, well, we knew in the law enforcement side that we needed I suggested 287G because based on probable cause, once we have you in custody, we are obligated to figure out who you are. My suggestion was to put an ICE agent right at the jail. We'll bring them to you.
That's where most of this happens anyway.
Exactly.
In jail. It doesn't happen in the field.
We have you in custody on a local charge of probable
Right.
cause. We bring him in. There's a question of your citizenship. Here's a federal agent. We'll even give him a desk. Arpaio laughed at me in 2004. Then all of a sudden it became a hot issue. Then in 2008, while I was running as a police chief, I got involved in the 1070. He said, here's another great tool. Let's don't misuse it. It's going to become racial profiling. The sheriff went this way, the police chief stuck together, and we did it the right way. We never got sued. We never violated any American citizens' rights. Now we've lost both those tools, which has actually had a negative effect on local law enforcement. And this is where I get frustrated because the media candidates, even at the presidential level, give this guy all the accolades for all this immigration stance, and what he's done is completely lost the tools that were useful for us.
Speaking of that, let me show you video tape number 3. This was Joe Arpaio at the Republican National Convention. I have rarely seen somebody from here. He got a standing ovation when he came out and chants of Joe, Joe, Joe. What did you make of that when you watched that?
Well, it's what motivates me to run. because it's so misleading. And when you've been fortunate enough to do this job successfully at that highest level, then I can dismantle this myth, and that's my mission, is to dismantle this myth.
Do you feel like you're tilting at windmills a little bit running against Sheriff Arpaio? I mean, he is, granted, his margin of victory has declined with each successive election in the last 3 cycles really. So you could say definitely he's vulnerable, but this is a tough guy to try to dethrone in a primary.
Well, when it's not personal, it's professional. Shame on me if I don't try. I've been blessed. The city of Mesa, the city of Buckeye have invested a ton of money in me, and I've been very successful. Even done international work, law enforcement work. How can I not have been given that toolbox and not put it up on the table and say we need to use this toolbox because of what's going on?
Tell me about the Buckeye experience and how you think that prepares you to maybe go into the sheriff's office and change things, because you were a change agent in Buckeye.
Yes, in fact, I was recruited to go there. I came from Mesa PD, which is a very professional, very progressive law enforcement agency. It went from 50,000 population to 400,000. So we experienced the same growth that Buckeye was faced with. That's what they encouraged. They wanted me to come because I had the background. When I got there, I was quite surprised. The organization was probably 15 to 20 years behind standard practices. So it began with a complete audit of the entire organization, top to bottom. Fiscally, positions, programs, everything that was going on. And during that process, we did terminate several officers. We indicted a few. We completely rewrote the policy manual. And that experience is what I believe has to happen now with the sheriff's office, is a complete and comprehensive review.
You mentioned that Buckeye, when you got there, was way behind. Do you think the sheriff's office is way behind in practices and performance and standards?
I think they're behind, and they're not allowing the organization to do the job it's supposed to do because the sheriff uses it as his personal toy. Again, if you're the chief law enforcement officer of this county, he needs to be actively involved with the Police Chief Association, data sharing, jail intelligence, servicing these cities. I mean, I can't imagine being a sheriff and not be at a city council meeting for every city in this county going, Mayor, members of the council, what can I do to support your police chief and your efforts here? We have satellite jails throughout this county that are closed because of the mismanagement. They're there to support the cities. So cities now have to take a prisoner drive all the way to Phoenix to book them. When I was a chief in Buckeye, we had to literally decide, are we gonna take this guy to jail today? We'll lose the officer for the whole shift.
Let me ask you about Sheriff Arpaio as we get ready to go to break. Your chief complaint about the way he has handled the office?
He's made all about him. It's his personal resource, and that's not what this is. This is our Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. That's what our taxpayers pay for, and he's used this to become his own thing.
Had he said, I'm not going to run again, would you have run? In other words, is this about Dan Sabin getting the job, or is this about removing Sheriff Arpaio?
No, honestly, it's about, and I've said it publicly, I wish he would retire. Let's give him the accolades of the good stuff that he's done, name a building after him, but it's time to just stop and take a new direction. Because I hate to see it get to this point. He's pending potential criminal indictment from a referral.
You're talking about the profiling case.
Yes, and that's
Judge Snow still.
I mean, just
considering
stop.
what to do.
It just needs to stop, and stop the bleeding fiscally, because it's a taxpayer expense.
So it is not personal for you.
No, never has been.
We're back with Dan Sabin in a minute, and when we continue, the candidate for Maricopa County Sheriff in the Republican primary, we're going to ask him about the chain gang and pink underwear and all the stuff that Sheriff Arpaio has been known for in the past, and what he thinks about those programs when we come back on Newsmaker Sunday.
Hurt.
Back on Newsmaker Sunday with candidate for sheriff on the Republican side in the primary coming up. Here, early voting has already started. Dan Sabin, former police chief of Buckeye, three-time candidate for Maricopa County Sheriff, and before that, 25 years with Mesa PD?
Yes. 32 total.
What's the best job you had as a cop?
Oh, I was so fortunate. I got to do everything, John. I did undercover, I did gangs, I did motors, I did SWAT. I've been at every level.
You liked all of it?
I just love this profession.
You grew up where?
In Mesa. Been in Mesa my whole life.
Who kind of spawned you on to become to go into law enforcement?
Actually, my cousin, Skip Fink, was a DPS officer. Was killed on the freeway, actually, when got rear-ended in his car.
I see his name.
Yeah, on the McClintock in the 60.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's your cousin.
That was my cousin. He talked me into it, and sitting over having a cup of coffee when I was trying to decide what to do after I got out of high school, and he talked me into it.
Does management just kind of happen if you stick around long enough?
No, it's very competitive, very political. You know, in the old days, it was pretty much the good old boys, and then it became very professional. You had to have your background, your college degrees.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to, actually got an associate's degree at Mesa Community College. I got a bachelor's degree at ASU, and I got a master's degree from NAU. I never found it in my heart to go to the other school. we won't mention the name.
There you go. I know that. Yes. Okay, so let me run by you a couple of things that Arpaio has done. Let's take tape number 4. This is one of the things that he was known for, the chain gang. What do you think about this whole thing? Is this something you'd continue, or is this just a sideshow?
Well, because this organization is not transparent and never been known to be, every program has to be audited to see if it's fiscally sound. If the program is fiscally sound, absolutely. In this particular scenario, what you have, and part of this myth, is that people drive down the road and see people doing this type of work, and they're like, yeah, I work hard every day, and that's what you get. Well, these are misdemeanor convicts who have been convicted of a misdemeanor. They volunteer to go out there to do this.
They want to get out.
Exactly.
I don't blame them.
And the guards are standing there with shotguns, just like you see on the TV in prison.
Cool hand Luke.
So if they take off running, you can't shoot them. You got to put the gun down and run and catch them. So again, part of that smoke and mirror shell game thing, this is a very good example of it. That's really not what's going on.
Pink underwear. What do you think?
That's
is
a
pink
huge
underwear?
one. I managed the jail. I actually was a jailer at MCSO. I worked in the jail.
Yeah, that's right. I did not
I started my
mention that
career.
You worked at MCSO.
4 years.
That's
I was a deputy.
Before
I worked
Joe
in the,
Arpaio.
Correct. I worked in the Maricopa County Jail. I oversaw the jail in Mesa, and I oversaw the jail in Buckeye. When you get booked, this is a fallacy. When you get booked into jail, you're stripped down to nothing. Everything's put in a bag, stapled with your name on it, goes on the shelf. We give you jail clothes. When you're completely done and you leave, you strip down, we give you back your bag, and you walk out of that jail with what you came in with. There's no way stuff gets stolen. It's a gimmick, okay? Because we control the parts, but the public doesn't understand that. So it's
That's
like
right. So the original idea was we'll make them pink and nobody will steal them.
How do they get stolen?
They
When
become
we
a
strip you
marketing
down?
item. Yes, they become
It's
a
like the
marketing
pink.
item.
It's the pink handcuffs. For 32 years, I've had the same pair of handcuffs because they don't get stolen. Because when I turn my prisoner over to you, I take my handcuffs off, you put yours on, and the guy goes.
So bottom line is,
It's just a gimmick. It's all a gimmick.
It's a marketing thing.
At taxpayer expense. Taxpayers are paying for that.
Let's look at tape number 5. This is one that probably put him on the map more than anything. Tent City. Is there a need or a necessity for Tent City?
You know, again, if it's a fiscally sound program, after you do a complete audit, absolutely, because you really don't know what's going on. The rumors are there's plenty of room inside the jail for these inmates to be at in a taxpayer expended jail system, which would actually be safer for the detention officers, because they do have a huge amount of vacancies there, so you have limited resources with manpower. Honestly, I can't answer it till we get a chance to review. If it's fiscally sound, we'll keep it, but if it's not fiscally sound, we have to get this organization to be back fiscally sound and stop the gimmicks.
I'll have you play dime store psychologist here for a minute. Why is Joe Arpaio running? He's now in his 80s. He's 84 now?
I believe so, yes.
Is he 84 or 83? Why do you believe he continues to run?
Well, I've watched him do several interviews, and I've heard him say, "The minute I leave, you'll forget about me." And I believe that's what it is. It's all about him. And I believe he can't accept the fact that you reach a point where it's just time to walk away and lose that option. And I don't think that would happen to him. I think with his notoriety, he would continue just in a different way. That wouldn't cost us so much money.
Now granted, his numbers of his margin of victory, as I pointed out, have declined over the last
Correct.
3 elections. It was kind of a squeaker actually last time. I mean,
Correct.
he laughs about it, says it wasn't close, but it was.
It was very close.
Given that, Why do you think the public, there's still this connection to Sheriff Joe Arpaio?
Well, there actually is a new twist now in this election cycle. And the twist is that he barely did squeak out a victory in 2012.
Over Paul Penzone.
Correct. Paul is waiting in the general election to face whoever wins this primary. It's quite statistically plausible that Joe can't beat Paul. Not only from the results in 2012, his notoriety is reduced since then. He's now got all this contempt of court. He's in violation of court orders. He's got a monitor assigned to the agency. Everything that could go wrong since 2012 has gone wrong. He can't beat the Democratic challenger in November.
You don't think so? You
I
believe
don't believe
that
so.
if he were to win in the primary,
The
in
Republicans,
the polling, we'll get into that in a minute.
yeah, the Republicans are going to lose this seat because the Republicans, I believe, in this primary have to decide of us four candidates who best can challenge the Democrat in November to have a legitimate chance at maintaining this constitutional position that's very important to Republicans. And
The
that
guy who's been in there for almost 25 years, you would think is the strongest guy, even though he's
not
got
when
some
you have the kind of baggage when you're pending a criminal complaint from a federal judge.
Do you believe if Joe Arpaio wins the primary, he loses to Paul Penzone in November?
I think that's a very, very likelihood.
We're back in a minute with Dan Sabin, a Republican candidate for Maricopa County Sheriff, trying to unseat Joe Arpaio. Back in a minute, right after this. And he's run now. This is the third. Final moments with Dan Sabin. He's run now. This is the third time he's running against Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and he is running against him here in this primary. The polling shows he's way ahead. Do you buy that polling? I mean, the polling shows you're going to get thumped.
Well, again, you have to give, if you believe in that credibility of that polling, it was automated, it was push button, nobody talked to nobody, it was make a choice 1, 2, or 3, so I'm going to probably push 1 to get the phone call over. I mean, you don't know who was on the other end. I mean, I don't think the poll holds any weight. I mean, I've been out, like I said, the last 8 months to over 200 events, meetings, speaking engagements, community leaders, faith community leaders, elected officials, law enforcement, millennials, college students.
And what do you tell them you want to do? What's your idea of how to change?
I want to duplicate the success I had in Buckeye as a police chief. I want to duplicate that policing strategy I used and take it countywide.
Which is?
And there was 4 pillars in that that policing strategy. Number 1 was a relationship with federal, state, and local law enforcement. You have to have the work together.
Is that missing right now?
Yeah, we don't have that because again, you don't have a sheriff that connects to that. The second was a relationship with the business community within the county, because the business leaders of this community want to give back, they want to support, they want to participate. They're shareholders. The faith community, I built a faith community program in Buckeye that was recognized by the White House and the governor's office for community partnerships, because the faith community in any community is on the front edge. They face domestic violence, drug abuse, alcoholism, sexual assault, and then the schools. We need to have a strong relationship with the kids that are going to be the future. We need a cop in every school. In Buckeye, we put a police car.
Expensive.
It is very expensive, but the investment is invaluable because it's 2 ways. There's a deterrent to having a police car up front. When that guy shows up, there's a cop car here. And now we have the police officers interacting with the future.
Relationships.
Exactly, because there's starting to be such a pushback with the community now and law enforcement. We have to invest in that on the front end.
Let's talk about that for a minute. There are a lot of people in law enforcement, and I hear from you all the time on Facebook, that feel that they are just under a microscope and being assailed at every turn. How do you turn that around?
It's tough, and that's what we did in Buckeye. If you get these relationships built on the front end and there's a challenge, it calms itself because there's trust. In Buckeye, I would get calls at 2, 3, 4 in the morning from community leaders. Hey, Chief, well, I just heard this on the news, or I saw this on the way home. What's going on? Here's what happened. Let's take a look at this. Calm down. It's calm. When you don't have the relationship and now you come out with a press release and you want to say the community says you're trying to hide something, this all has to be done on the front end.
We've got 30 seconds. A vote for Dan Sabin versus a vote for Joe Arpaio is what?
Just restore the professional honor and fiscal responsibility, the constitutional liberties that are protected with this office, and bring it back to the professional organization it should be, that it once was when I worked there, and provide a strategic plan across this county that keeps us all safe.
Is there something you'd want to say to Joe Arpaio?
No, just again that, my wife and I, we pray for his wife every day. We wish him the best. We wish him good health and good luck in this campaign.
Dan Sabin, our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. Good luck, and appreciate it. And we've extended the invitation to Joe Arpaio as well, and we'll keep you posted what we hear back. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Sunday.